Sorry, technical difficulties here. It's weird that they don't let you like set it up. Maybe I don't know. I'm new to streaming, but it's weird that they don't just like let you set it up and then go live rather than go live and figure it the fuck out. But hey, that's what you get for using free shit. Although YouTube Premium is sure as hell not free. So, anyways, guys, welcome to the show. I'm the host as always, Jacob Hayes, the Matterhead himself. Thank you for joining me. I thought I'd give a live stream a try today, so we're doing that. And I'm realizing that I need a bigger green screen because it doesn't cover the whole fucking thing. So, but that's okay. That's it's all part of the process. So I'm Jacob Hayes. I'm an actor, comedian. What else do I do? Folklorist. I think that's a fair description to call myself. Whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. I don't know. No, I don't know. I study, I've always, shit. Already fucking up. And it's still rolling. Holy shit. But yeah, I love folklore. Well, I'll say this. I love history. And that got me into folklore and legends and folk belief or mythological belief, religious belief. All these kinds of things. I really love this kind of stuff. It's probably because I watched too much Indiana Jones as a kid. So I'm kind of a weird person that I like comedy. I like entertainment. I like being silly or being fun, but I also like storytelling and I like the deep drama and, putting good wisdom into storytelling and all that stuff. But I also like all this history stuff. And it got me into so many different avenues of interest that I got into. And it's probably just because I'm a weirdo and I like weird topics. I like things. I've always liked stuff that was kind of fringe or, um, kind of on the edge of the unknown or edge of what's known. That always fascinated me because to me, that kind of stuff, like, sure, some of it, or maybe even a lot of it on the surface, you could be like, oh, well, there's obviously no truth to that, which is the common knee jerk kind of reaction with a lot of this stuff nowadays. But in my experience, the world, and I'm not just trying to say this to be cool or whatever, but it's true. It's like the world is genuinely, it's a magical place. It's mystical. There's an energy here. Even if you're not religious, I think a lot of people, if you're kind of honest with yourself, maybe if you're not, you wouldn't say this to other people because you're not weird like me. But if you think about it, the world's like this very yeah, it's a very mystical place. I think that's why there's a genuine interest in fantasy and spirituality kind of storylines because it gets you into, it's not, like a lot of fantasy projects are just, you could argue anyway, is just like escapism or whatever. But like to me, like proper fantasy is about exploring that part of life itself that is kind of real and that it is real magic. It's like, for example, there's, we don't have the superpowers that we might like to have. And so then we might look around and say, oh, we'll be very nihilistic and, oh, there's no magic in the world or whatever. Cause yeah, we don't have Superman powers or whatever, but there's more subtle forms of magic and in some ways more profound that I find very interesting. And I guess it's maybe because I use my own definition of magic and, when I talk about mystical stuff or spiritual stuff, it's very subjective for a lot of people. I get it. It's either you've had those kinds of experiences or you haven't. And there's so many different, kinds of those kinds of experiences out there to have too. So it's a complicated thing. But anyway, I always liked all of these topics because I always felt like there's something to explore there, whether it's in fiction or in real life accounts of people going, hey, I've experienced something. And this interest of mine, I've taken across everything from, as I said, history and religion to very weird, strange places. But I'm glad that I went there because it helped me understand my own strange experiences that I have that I get into on the show that I'm still trying to process and kind of understand, well, what does that mean? And how much can we know? And really until you've lived some of that life, until you've had some of those life experiences, like, I don't know if you can appreciate really just how, when you're forced to deal with something fantastic or paranormal or otherworldly, it really forces you to, like me, I believed in a lot of things even before things happened to me. Um, that I was like, well, I think that there's something to this or whatever. And then even when it happens, it's like, oh, this is really hard to process. And like, even though I believed it, it's like seeing something, it's not quite the same, but it's almost like seeing, like an action hero in real life. It breaks the spell. It kind of, it messes with you. It kind of trips you up a little bit. And, um, yeah, to me, there's something inherently interesting about the world that is kind of mystical. And I know that's very like, who the hell says that kind of shit nowadays? Like we're in a very atheist nihilist era. And I have pretty close atheist friends actually, and I think they keep me in check and honest as far as like what do I believe and why and where does the line between it all fit in and whatever. But anyways, so that was just a little bit about me to just explain what I'm interested in, and really it's just anything that, like I said before, is kind of on the edge of what we know, and that to me is where true science, true discovery, true art really takes place is in that kind of space. So whether it's fiction, fictional entertainment, or whether it's real history or someone's personal account, that you kind of have to take with a grain of salt. Like, well, is this true? Were they, did they really experience this? Is it what they think they saw, kind of a thing? And all I can say is with a lot of these paranormal subjects, especially with the UFO subject, is that there's something weird going on. And it's a phenomenon that seems to affect a lot of people differently, and it's very similar, if not a part of this religious history and tradition of people experiencing, spiritual encounters. And I don't know. It's just, the more I dig into this whole subject of, especially with anything paranormal, but the UFO subject with kind of the whole, uh, not just Judeo-Christian history of these subjects, but like with all this stuff, you start to realize like, oh, it is all kind of the same. It's the same language. It's the same type of archetypal experiences. Whatever these things are, it seems real. As best as I can see it. And anyway, so I wanted to get into some of these strange articles with American history that kind of support what I'm talking about when it comes to, you know, taking this out of the realm of, oh, this is just one guy's crazy belief, even though there's a lot of people I think like me or similarly minded to me as to, hey, there's weird stuff going on out there. Um, so I'm just gonna get into it because I know I think I've already lost a couple of the. I think I had two people in the room and then they left, and I get it because I was rambling, so I feel bad. And I need to drink my fucking coffee or iced tea. Um, yeah, I went to the coffee bean, by the way, just as a quick segment, which is perfectly fine as it looks like because there's nobody listening to the stream currently. Um, but yeah, I went down to the coffee bean or whatever, and holy hell, they sweeten that shit way too much. I just got like a cold brew, and I don't know what the hell they poured. It's like they poured the entire vat of syrup that they had back there into it. Um, let's see, where was I? So, anyways, so that's just a little bit about me. I know nobody's here. Nobody stayed after I said all that stuff, um, which is pretty funny. Uh, but yeah, so long story short, I got into all this stuff, uh, you know, from a place of, hey, there's something weird going on in with the world. There's something uh, kind of mystical about this, you know, energy or whatever you want to call it. About sorry, I'm not describing this well because I'm still waking up a little bit. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's not all fiction. You know, this weird stuff. It's not completely out there. And I say this because I've experienced some of it, so I know it's real to some extent. But then it's getting to the bottom of what is at the bottom of the whole phenomenon. And I think it's a bit mind racking, at least for me, just because I've spent a lot of time, not just with this phenomenon, but with a lot of these paranormal questions. Um, what did it, what are we looking at? What are we dealing with? What's happening here? Um, Skinwalker Ranch is a perfect example. Uh, the amount of in the UFO world and paranormal world, everything's about how there's this, the people that map this kind of stuff. They'll point out spots geographically that are called points of high strangeness, essentially, which is kind of an interesting concept and phenomenon where a lot of these reports of everything from UFO phenomenon to ghost phenomenon and all these different, light orbs, seeing UFOs, seeing aliens, seeing the skinwalker shapeshifter guy, seeing the wolf, seeing all these kind of key manifestations all happening in the same place. Is it the same underlying phenomenon, or is there something about certain locations that has a certain doorway between the worlds, kind of a thing, which is a very interesting idea, I think, on multiple levels. Um, if that's real, but it makes sense to me from what I understand, even about religion and spirituality, because religion and spirituality are very much a similar kind of idea. There's this whole concept of spiritual mapping where, if there's been sacrifices done or violence done, or, especially something of a ritualistic nature, let's say, but even not just any kind of, you know, going stretching back to ancient times, just this whole idea of like if you poison the earth with blood, if you shed blood in this area, I mean, it goes back to the Bible and before, even if like it's a very very ancient concept. Um, and even if it's just psychological, somehow, at least in our genetic memory, it kind of seems to imprint because it definitely makes a certain spookiness to certain places. And there's I think, a certain realness to you can sense certain places have a certain feeling to them. I always have certain vibes when I go to places like Vegas or sometimes up in the mountains. Like when I'm in nature and away from society, I feel the best, right? And then sometimes when I go to certain areas, I'm like, oh, there's a vibe here. And sometimes it's a good vibe and sometimes it's a creepy vibe. I've gotten that from people too, not many times, but just from like a couple people in my life where it's very, very distinct. It was like, stay away from these people. So I think, long story short, there is some kind of truth to that. I don't pretend to be some, you know, like I have all the answers kind of a dude or whatever. But yeah, there's some realness to this stuff, I think. Um, and so, anyways, this high strangeness concept that this stuff kind of can overlap or kind of coalesce in central regions or areas is very strange but interesting to me. And one of those areas, getting more on topic with the video, this has all kind of been a slow build. Um, is the Southern California region, especially off the coast and beaches of Santa Monica, uh, down to Huntington Beach, and even further south, uh, and everything westward in the entire general area of the Channel Islands area. And it's very interesting. The Channel Islands consists of several islands, but some of the main ones are um, the I was about to say Santa Clarita, but I don't think that's right. The Santa I'm thinking of the Santa Clarita Diet with Drew Barrymore, which is not what I was going for. Um, I just had it up. How is this not here? Oh, sorry, Catalina Island. I don't know why I was thinking Santa. Um, UFO history. Hold on, I have to pull up this article. Okay, well, this isn't the exact thing, but yeah. So the Catalina Islander. Well, we'll get to the Catalina Islander article here in a second, but um, basically Catalina Island, which is kind of a Martha's Vineyard type island off the coast of Santa Monica, California. Here, I'm not sure. I think it's like an hour ferry ride or something like that, but it's a little bit of a ways out. Um, but the history of this place, with especially UFO uh, accounts and paranormal phenomenon, is honestly fascinating as hell. Um, because I had experienced things before I even started looking into the particular UFO history and light orb and all this paranormal stuff history, for this region. But after I had experienced some stuff, I was like, oh, I want to dig more into this subject because was really interesting to me that this is like like first of all, Los Angeles County. Okay, think about this. Los Angeles County. I might take these headphones off, by the way, because I'm realizing I forgot that I can't hear through them at all. I just got talking. Um, but yeah, Los Angeles County is the number one. Sorry, they get more UFO reports from Los Angeles County than any other county in the United States. Um, for whatever reason, February is the number one month for UFO sightings and reports. And amongst, as far as demographics, the people that see UFO sightings the most are dog walkers and cigarette smokers, especially dog walkers who are also cigarette smokers. And so you take all of that, that coalesced, like I fit in at the time with that demographic, that county, and that time of the year. And that was one of my more profound sightings. And then I had a bunch of sightings off of Santa Monica Beach as well. And Los Angeles, to be fair, gets tons of air traffic. So I think that shouldn't be understated. And certainly not everybody who thinks they see a UFO, it's actually a UFO, right? There's just tons of air traffic. So there's always that reality. But especially when you're considering the stuff that you see out in the ocean, and especially when it's very distinctively not an airliner, in the sense of its shape, at least with its luminescence and all this, or the way it moves, or the way it moves too quickly or too impossibly, or turns in crazy directions. I mean, there's just such a history of these reports. And online on YouTube, of course, there's plenty of stuff that's fake on the internet as well. But there's, I think, an immense amount of data or witness testimony or evidence, however you want to word it, of this phenomenon occurring, people witnessing it, recording it on their phones, because that's a whole thing you hear from a lot of people where it's like, oh, well, if UFOs are real, like, why can't people just capture it on their phones? It's like, they are, dumbass. Like, you're just not. I mean, I know stuff's getting shadow banned and censored left and right, but like, this stuff's very real, as far as, like, there's plenty of, I'll say this, there's plenty of just strange reports of people, of normal people, everyday working class people, having these experiences, witnessing these things, recording these things. Yeah, sure, maybe a small percentage can be explained away by whatever, but we've seen enough weird shit at this point that it's pretty provable that there is a phenomenon. Like, to me, that's not debatable. Like, there is an event occurring. For all we know, it's a foreign enemy, right? I don't think that's the case, but you know what I mean? Like, all possibilities are on the table to a degree. And so when these kinds of things happen, it's very weird to me that people want to act like they're not real, outside of the fact that there's been this massive disinformation and, mind control, essentially, techniques that have been put on this entire topic or subject or whatever. So it's frustrating for people like me who are just like, I'm just genuinely asking questions and trying to do, get to the bottom of things. And, I'm just some idiot, kid at the end of the day. So what do I know? Right. But, I've experienced what I've experienced. I've seen what I've seen. I've done tons of research. I know the phenomenon is happening. The question is, what is it? And is it a singular answer? Is it a multifactored answer? Does anyone want to hear that? Or do they just want to, either hate and ignore the entire concept, or jump on the ancient aliens bandwagon, where it's like, either you don't believe in aliens, or you believe the aliens are real and that they created us. There's no happy medium here. And coincidentally enough, or funny enough, the biblical answer to these things gives one of the better explanations that I've ever heard, personally, even though you could say I'm biased because I'm, Christian or whatever and come from religious upbringing. I genuinely think, as somebody who's studied exhaustive amounts of comparative mythology and comparative religion, albeit in an amateur and personal way, but still, I've done that a lot. It seems pretty clear to me. I mean, the phenomenon occurs everywhere, across society, across cultures. There's no getting away from it. So you can laugh at it all you want, and I agree, it's laughable or strange or weird in a way, but it doesn't mean that it's not happening or that it's not real. Like, just to take kind of a random example, like dreams are pretty fucking weird. Like to me, there's no reason we should be able, like we should dream or have that ability to have higher artistic ability or consciousness or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, point being, just because something's weird or strange or odd doesn't mean that it should be discounted. It's like nature's full of odd miracles, and that's part of the beauty of it. Um, so that's my argument with that. But anyways, so the Channel Islands are interesting, and I want to get into this article about the Channel. The Catalina Islander observer who. I want to pull up the right article because this thing was so fascinating to me when I first checked this out. Catalina Islander UFO history. So, anyways, the Catalina Islander is a. No, I'm not finding it. There we go. Return of the UFOs. So the Catalina Islander is a very old newspaper on Catalina Island, and we'll get into some of the history about Catalina Island as well. I'll just say really briefly before I start reading the article. Catalina Island is a very fascinating history. UFO accounts, giant legends, light orb legends, Native American legends about not just that island, but this whole area that we're in Southern California. Profoundly, like just so many stories of, hey, okay, people were seeing something back even in settler days out here. And by the way, that could be said for pretty much the whole of North America. From everything I've studied. I mean, even Christopher Columbus has multiple diary entries of describing, something equatable with UFO or light orb or strange paranormal account or whatever. And then, of course, there's the whole, hey, I think I saw mermaids things too. I'm not saying to take any one of these things at face value and go, well, okay, that happened the way we think it did or whatever. But the point is once you put all these together, it shows a picture of, at the very least, some psychological phenomenon that humanity shares on mass scales, similar to religion itself. But I don't think that that's fair to just chalk it up to everybody's crazy or hallucinating. I think it's a little bit deeper than that. And anyway, so you have all these stories of I mean, even throughout the 1900s, so many newspaper stories of just weird accounts and finding weird giant bones, and that's one of them. Or one of the stories with Catalina Island in particular, where they found so the Wrigley Gum family who owns Double Mint, Juicy Fruit, all that good shit. Bought Catalina Island, sometimes also known as Avalon Island. I forget when exactly, but sometime in the early 20th century. I think it was sometime in the 1920s. That's at least when the discovery was made of these giant skeleton bones. It was reported in the local newspapers at the time, and I think actually got some pretty a lot of national media attention as well, from what I remember looking into it. And it's an interesting story because, a lot of people say, oh, there's no truth to any giant bones around the world ever being discovered, and there's no realism to it at all, which I think is pretty insane because we've confirmed the Hobbit skeletons or whatever that they found in, I forget where, I want to say Africa. Point being, it's pretty presumable, especially with as much oral history and written history that we have of oversized giants, albeit a lot of it's in religion and mythology because it's from such an ancient period in our collective memory or whatever. But still, because of all that, there should be something behind that, similarly to us discovering smaller humanoids. I don't think that means. I guess my point is that proves that variation in the human, genetics has occurred to, include a variety of sizes. And so, anyways, I just don't think it's an unscientific thing to postulate like, oh, it's likely. I mean, especially once again with so many different cultures reporting, hey, there were giants, and they often have the same kind of reports of 6 fingers, 6 toes. They're cannibalistic. There's all these theories about them being descendants of, supernatural beings according to the Bible. And then if you look at other cultures and other religions, they confirm or have a similar narrative of there's some kind of supernatural heritage or lineage. Now, I'm not trying to say that I can sit here and prove definitively one way or the other, but that is the common story. And so the idea that there's not some truth, at least, to there being a physical race of beings being larger, or several tribes of them, as once again described in not only the Bible, but like literally the Indian Vedas. Doesn't matter what you like, point at anything in the ancient world, and they're like, the gods came down here, they banged our earth women. Next thing you know, there's fucking, giants running around everywhere eating our earth women and our men, like it's a whole thing. Um, and I'm not here to be the guy who's like, okay, I can prove that or whatever, because I can't, but that's the story of that. So it's not really a matter of like, do you believe the story or not? It's what's been passed down. So then if you consider that, and then you consider all these weird UFO phenomena and sightings and stories, and then all the, like Catalina Island. And this is why I'm focusing on this story, because this was one of the, in my opinion, one of the biggest of these found giant skeleton stories of the past, couple hundred years or whatever. And it's interesting. And I know I'm not covering anything new. Like, this article is from 2015, and this is kind of old news for a lot of people. But so many people never get exposed to these ideas, so that's why I wanted to bring some of the stuff up again. And it really points to how, like, once again, there's something to this phenomenon. Like, people reported finding something there. And this is part of why I want to visit Catalina Island, because there's supposed to be a shop on the island of this old guy who keeps supposedly some of these giant skeletons still, not fully intact or whatever, but like pieces of it, like a femur or whatever. I don't know if that's true, or if they're fakes, or if it's all for tourism. I'm sure that's equally possible as well. But it's a very interesting idea that there could be some of the skeletal remains were not all shipped to God knows where. I guess the Smithsonian or wherever. That's the other thing. I've seen a lot of articles online trying to discount that idea that, oh, you're insane, or you're a conspiracy theorist if you think that bones went missing from the Smithsonian. It's like, this is pretty well documented. Like, there's been a lot of cases, not just of giant bones, not even, like, step away from this entire topic. Like, it's not just about the giant stuff. Like, there's so many cases of just weird things going missing. But I wouldn't just blame the Smithsonian. Like, think about it. Anything with antiquities, anything of a religious significance as well, or a spiritual, uh, or even not that, but just something that would challenge the traditional historical orthodox, would be kind of like, hey, we don't talk about that. Like, I've talked about this in one of my last videos. It's very common. There was some museum in London, some ancient history museum in London, that had only about 5% of its archaeological artifacts on display, and 95% pretty much never saw the light of day. You consider that, you're like, okay, so we're only seeing a piece of a fragment of history. Then you consider how, once again, if anything's too profound or earth-shaking, it's either not going to be displayed, or it's not even going to make it to the museum. Maybe it'll be destroyed because of people's particular beliefs. People are crazy and weird. They do weird shit like that. Or it'd be sold on the black market, which is probably the most likely case of anything that's profound or interesting. So I always see this stuff as, and to me, there's always been a long history of that, like, of eccentric billionaires collecting weird, not just skeletal remains, but all kinds of weird stuff. And yeah, there's fake stuff too. And I get it. Not all. You can't be like, oh, the Fiji mermaid's real and all this. Like I get it. There's fakes. But point being, I think that if something does get found or discovered that's very profound, I mean, at a high enough level, it's going to be, the military is going to swoop in on it, at a maybe slightly lower level. Yeah, it'll just go missing, and it's no longer in the Smithsonian archives or whatever historical archives, you know what I mean? So it's not an issue of like, oh, is it just, so yeah, it's not an issue of just that. It's an issue of, sorry, I got distracted because I got a call coming in. Where is it going with that? Anyways, long story short, it's not just a conspiracy theory or whatever. If you think about it, like, there's so much war of philosophy and debate over anything historical. If you find something that would support a biblical narrative, or or once again, just anything profound or interesting, I think in most cases it's going to end up on the black market, or so little history, my point, makes it to the museum or makes it into the textbook, and it's accurate reflected as to what that history it is, and it is completely comprehensive, So at the end of the day, I don't discount these kinds of stories, but I also say, you don't want to just believe everything you read or that people claim. Just because it was a newspaper article from 100 years ago doesn't mean it's everything it was cracked up to be. And yeah, I get it. It was the age of snake oil salesmen and all the arguments you hear from people going like, okay, well, don't believe this shit kind of thing. But in my opinion, I mean, I've read so much of this stuff in researching it and looking for what evidence might be out there. Once again, it goes back to, well, why do you have so many freaking stories? Like, yeah, I get it. To some degree, it's like, like people make stuff up for fame or fortune or whatever, but it's just, I don't know. There's too many people, farmers, good, honest, everyday working class people who have profound stories of, finding giant bones, like what happened at Wrigley Island or, whatever. And who knows? Maybe it is all kind of bullshit, but it's like, once again, this is just from looking at the history that we've inherited. It's like, well, when you put the scrapbook together, it's like it looks like something was there. So it's more of like, hey, let's get to the bottom of that. And also, it's interesting, a very profound and interesting claim, which pops up around the UFO and alien phenomenon and the giant phenomenon, weirdly enough, as well, where the Native Americans are like, oh, we didn't build a lot of these megalith stuff. That was from the elder race or the first ones or the giants, right? And then there's all these Native American tribes, especially in the Southwest, but really all over, that talked about fighting the giants and all this stuff, and that they were cannibals and that they had to kill them off or hunt them down, and that they lived in caves at some points and all this stuff. But it's interesting because there's all these stories of that, and then the Native Americans, even in Southern America, are like, no, we didn't build. I forget which tribe it is, but the archaeologists are like, oh, see, you guys built it, and they're like, no. Even according to our own oral history, we didn't build this. It was the older ones. So there's this congruent narrative of the indigenous beliefs, like their history, not just belief system, not just kind of abstract religious ideas, but like, no, like we've encountered these things, or my father or grandfather encountered these things. That it kind of lends some credence to like, well, there's something going on there. And then there is also this huge mysterious hole in archaeology of like, well, who did build all these ancient megalith sites? And, you know, like how did they move these big stones? You know what I mean? So I'm just saying, like, there's a rational line of looking into this stuff where you're like, oh, it actually makes sense to at least try to investigate this whole subject, because there's a lot of things in place that kind of not confirm, but allude to like, oh, this is the right direction of what's going on here. There's a lot of things coalescing is my point. And so you have all these megalith sites around the world. You have all these, especially in North America and South America, these Native American legends of this stuff. Then there's this whole aspect of North America and the Americas being the land of the plumed serpent and all the serpent and dragon imagery and whatnot. Every ancient, going back to the whole kind of giants and Nephilim theory, the idea of there at least being the claim of supernatural lineage or whatever, is literally, even in schools nowadays, is taught as like, well, that's the whole, I think it's called the lowering of the kingship, or lowering of the kingship from heaven. And it's basically this idea that the king isn't just king because he's supposed to be, but he's like infused with the DNA of God or the gods. You know what I mean? Like the Viking culture, I am the son of Odin or the grandson of Odin. You know what I mean? Like, this is around the world. It doesn't matter what culture you look at. It's, oh, I'm the king and I am part of the lineage of the gods. I'm a demigod or son of a god. I'm the mightiest of amongst men because my family or lineage is married into the gods, whatever the gods are, which could just be a tribe of men, right? Even if they were a little bit taller. So point being, that's the narrative. That's the legend, religion, mythology. That's the whole kit and caboodle, right? So, going from there, it's like, well, okay, there's a very profound universal narrative of like as commonplace as the flood myth around the world, where you're like, okay, well, something's here. And then to have all these North American megalith site discoveries, giant discoveries. That's the other key thing at the site of Wrigley Island when they found all this at Catalina Island, same difference. They reported in the article, it was very peculiar to me. Not only did they have the 6 fingers, 6 toes, they were tall. I think they were supposed to be red-haired or blonde. It's always that case with any of these kinds of discoveries for some reason, usually red-haired, but often blonde as well. So they're red-haired, they're 6 to 7 to 8 to 9 feet tall. depending on which one you're talking about in the reports. I mean, supposedly with this site, there was like thousands of bones discovered, and also normal sized human bones, and also lots of children bones. So they were doing child sacrifice or human sacrifice. There's evidence of blood, and there was evidence of cannibalism. So all of those features I just described are congruent amongst all of these ancient sites around the world. So it's really kind of interesting and weird. It's like, well, why is that the case? So jumping back to using the Bible for at least some context or possible explanation with some of these things for those who aren't religious or biblical minded, it is very strange and interesting that sites like Gilgal Rephaim, which is a series of concentric stone circles in the Middle East, and these pop up everywhere across Europe, of course. There's Stonehenge and all this stuff. Very similar megalith sites, right? And that site in particular, Gilgal Rephaim, according to the Bible, is supposed to be built by, it's even in the name, Gilgal Rephaim. The Rephaim are the sons of the Nephilim, and the Nephilim are the sons of the gods. Who are the gods? Well, either it's like the pagans say, right? They are actually the gods, or they're fallen angels, like according to the Bible, or according to ancient aliens type philosophies, they're aliens, right? So depending on your theology and your philosophy, you're going to have a different answer for what that thing is. But that narrative that I just described is what occurs in every ancient religion, every ancient culture, for whatever reason, over and over and over again in different mutations, but it's the same program. It's the same formula over and over again. So it's very strange, very interesting. And to me, it shows that there's something to this narrative. Like there's a reason this is so, there's something at the bottom of it, I guess, is where I'm at with this, where I'm just like, there's got to be a tribe of oversized humans that possibly were cannibals because they were really, bigger than other people, and maybe they were just very warlike, and that's why they got into cannibalism. It just became like a whole ego power trip thing. It's like athletes on steroids. You can come up with a variety of explanations, I guess is my point, or possibilities as to why would they do these things? What's the origin of this culture? How did they go across the world and build these megaliths? Well, who knows? There's a lot of weirdness around this entire subject. It's not just the bodies themselves, but it's also the culture in question and the megaliths they built and all this weird shit. You're just like, what's happening here? California especially has a lot of weird, like with the Queen Cali stuff, which I'll probably say for its own podcast, but like it just has so much weird stories where you're like, what the hell was happening over here? It's like, it's really, really interesting. And it's, I don't know. To me, there's something to this whole theory of like, I don't know if they were actually a global culture. Like it wasn't like a unified government, but I think they did carry their religion, even though it mutated across the world, and they carried, these certain practices of building megalith sites. And if it's the same ones that we think, they think they are, they're obsessed with studying the stars and new knowledge of things that really doesn't make sense. Like how the heck could you have known this stuff? So there's still a lot of open-endedness with this, but this is just to kind of illustrate that there's enough of a context for like a void that needs to be filled or a void that needs to be explained when it comes to these subjects, that it's not as easy as being like, well, you're crazy if you believe in any of it. It's like, there's actually a lot of weirdness around it. It's, that's why with my show, I'm not very conclusion oriented, because I don't want to be like, well, I have all the answers, I'll share with you what I think, but I'm also pretty honest in like my pitfalls, and I don't know everything, and I don't have all the evidence. And if you have evidence or if you have information, please send it in, write it in, your own thoughts, theories, comments, criticisms, war stories, epithets, poems, etc. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. Write in the comments. That's what it's for. Or write it to my email, by the way, at strangetv@protonmail.com. That's strangetv@protonmail.com. If you have your own story, doesn't matter. It could be anything weird, anything interesting. Sometimes I talk about comedy stuff and entertainment as well. I don't just talk about this kind of weird stuff, or more traditional history stuff I cover as well. But yeah, if you have any of that kind of stuff, or just things you'd like to share with me, links, videos, etc., definitely send that in, because I want to start featuring more stuff on the show. And also, especially if you have anything of a paranormal UFO or just kind of a weird, like, I don't know what I caught or what I recorded on camera, definitely send that in. I want to start popping those up and playing those more into the podcast, and maybe even the live streams if I can figure that shit out. I'm still kind of learning how to operate this whole fucking system right now. Not the I am kind of a nerd dork, but I'm not the best with technology. It's kind of the worst of both worlds. So anyways, Catalina Islander, I'm sorry for putting it off so long, but this article is really, really fascinating. So I just wanted to pull a few. I don't want to read the whole thing for you guys. Fuck it. So in the world of, so this is by Jim Watson. This is the Catalina Islander. Once again, the Catalina Island, you know, entrenched newspaper. It's the New York Times of Catalina Island. Like, it's pretty much their only newspaper. It's their newspaper of record, etc. So this is them claiming this, and this is written by somebody, I'm pretty sure anyway, like they grew up there, you know what I mean? Or maybe not grew up there, but point being, like, they understand the history of this place and they understand what the locals believe, and that's what they're sharing this. So in the world of UFO research, it's called, article's called Mysterious Island, The Return of the UFOs. In the world of UFO research, it appears that hell hath frozen over. Just recently, the National Archives released all or most of the documents related to the U.S. Air Force's infamous Project Blue Book, amounting to the holy grail for UFO researchers. Yeah, well, they could have released more shit about the UFO topic. That's all I'm saying. I mean, that 6-page report they did recently, that was some bullshit. We're going to tell you everything about UFOs. Here's a 6-page report saying we don't know shit. And yes, getting back to the article, and yes, there are a number of Catalina sightings located within. For those of you who don't watch the History Channel, Project Blue Book was the U.S. Air Force's secret UFO investigation unit and was in existence from 1952 to 1969. In the world of UFO research, it appears that hell hath frozen over. I hope I didn't read that twice. Just recently, the National Archives released, I did just read that. They wrote that twice in their article. That's terrible. Okay. Here we go. I don't know why they wrote. I don't know. That's a glitch in the Matrix. I swear that didn't happen last time I read this article. So for those of you who don't watch the History Channel, Project Blue Book was the U.S. Air Force's secret UFO investigation unit and was in existence from 1952 to 1969. For the first time ever, thousands upon thousands of documents are now available to inquiring minds who want to know. Best of all, and rather surprisingly, these documents have all been posted on the internet and they're free. This being the computer age and all the documents are searchable by year or keyword. They can be accessed at projectbluebook.theblackvault.com. By the way, highly recommend the Black Vault. Excellent UFO researcher, I think. And he does it proper and like dots his I's, crosses his T's as far as his research and everything. He's really more of a journalist. Just hats off to the guy because it's such a profoundly complicated field and subject to tackle, and I just really immensely respect the work he's put in there and all the Freedom of Information Act requests that he's put in over there as well. So definitely check him out. I mean, if you're into this topic at all, I'm sure you've come across him already, but definitely check his work out. It's just called the Black Bolt Project on YouTube. And he has his own website. Definitely support him. So I came across the 5 different sightings in the database. Listing Catalina Island as the location, a paltry number considering the number of people who have reported sightings to me in just in the 20 years that I've lived on the island. So this is this guy in the article talking about like 20 years, and a lot of people have talked to me about the shit they've seen. And there's tons of, once again, you can go online and even my YouTube channel, Strange TV, what you're watching right now, we feature a lot of in the beginning, especially, I shared a lot of other people's stuff. Now I'm trying to share or create my own stuff. So I feel a little bit bad about that. But to me, I think it's important to spread the message of the event and the phenomenon. And I try to give credit where credit's due. But anyways, I have some footage of, it's not my footage, but a nice lady on the internet's footage recording these strange green luminous lights off the coast of Catalina Island. So definitely give that a watch. Just type in Catalina Island UFO or light orb, Catalina Island orb or whatever, on my channel, though, Strange TV. So I was only able to research parts of the database in the short time before my deadline for this column, so further investigation might yield more. Any takers? Of the 5 Catalina Islands, 4 appeared to be explainable by meteors, astronomical phenomenon, or in one case, military equipment that was parachuting to Earth. Believe it or not, I have high standards when it comes to such things. Cool. The most intriguing of the Catalina reports, however, comes from a sighting in 1949. So this goes back to World War II pretty much. On April 28th, 1949, an unnamed civilian from Boise, Idaho, man's name was redacted, was visiting Catalina and made the following report. About 8 o'clock on the night of April 28th, my wife and a school teacher saw six objects in the sky, not in a group, but singly. A few minutes later, after going to my daughter's home, on the next street and corresponding block, she and my daughter and my grandson saw four more, all traveling in the same direction. The gentleman then quaintly concludes his handwritten report by saying, "If you are still interested in flying discs, saucers, etc., please let me know and I will write more in full." There's no indication that the Air Force took him up on his offer of more information, and the official conclusion for Project 10073, as this sighting was labeled, states insufficient data for evaluation. What's most interesting about this sighting is its eerie similarity to a sighting in Avalon only 2 years earlier, a sighting that, for whatever reason, is not included in the Project Blue Book database or was never investigated by the Air Force. And I want to take a moment to pause and say this. A lot of people will try to debunk the UFO phenomenon. First of all, there's plenty of credible, sober, especially military witness accounts, which I think are very profound and important. It's like you trust them enough to handle the nukes and the guns, but you don't trust them to say, hey, I saw something weird. I know a couple people in my personal life who have served in the Navy and things like this are like, no, I've seen UFOs uphand in person. It's absolutely real. And we're told to shut up about it and never talk about it, even amongst fellow crewmen. So this is a very real reality of like very few legitimate cases, and especially the most profound cases, don't get seen the light of day. Or if they do, it's because of passionate, freedom-loving, information-loving Americans who get the story out somehow eventually. But a lot of this stuff just simply is never treated with any respect or covered. And once again, yeah, there's a lot of that's not a real case or that's not a real whatever. But like this stuff does happen, and there's enough real cases to go, okay, there's some phenomenon here. We got to kind of try to get to the bottom of it and understand and explain a little bit more. So continuing with the article, it was on a bright, sunny July afternoon in 1947 that a number of people on Catalina Island watched in astonishment as two groups of three flying discs, so this is a separate case, two groups of three flying discs, 6 UFOs in total, soared over Avalon only to disappear over the vast Pacific. The date was July 8th, 1947, the exact same day that the United States Army reported the crash of a flying saucer at the Roswell Army Airfield in New Mexico. And that's where we get into this strange thing that I've only started considering. Because I've been to Vegas a few times, and one time I think, well, I'll say this. It's either next-gen Army drone that can fly at like truly impossible speeds across landscapes, or it was a UFO, and I saw two of them, and it was pretty weird. And I was like, well, military base and all this stuff. And then, of course, literally minutes after I saw it, because I'm driving through Vegas, I see the, Area 51 is not too far from here sign or whatever. So that was funny, to say the least. And, I tried to record it, what I thought I saw, and it didn't come out perfect, but it was very interesting. And I've always got a weird feeling about Vegas anyway, anytime I've been there, which is weird because, I always loved the idea of Vegas. I didn't have any reason to like dislike it or whatever, but I've always gotten this kind of spooky vibe anytime I've actually physically been to Vegas. And also I just feel unhealthy and it's dry there or whatever. But anyways, it's interesting because there is this weird connection between, between Vegas and this area. SoCal, Santa Monica, Channel Islands, Catalina Island, for whatever reason, they're both huge UFO hotspots, right? And then if you go, I think, southeast of Vegas, that's where so much of, that's where Roswell is, if I remember right, and Aztec, New Mexico, all of these very crucial UFO sightings and crashes, according to the history that's come down, right? UFO crashes, all these weird things, UFO sightings, reports, alien sightings, I've been abducted, stories, all this kind of stuff. And so there's this weird relationship I'm starting to see between these two areas. If nothing else, they're both just high strangeness hotspot points for paranormal activity, for UFO activity, for whatever reason. Or who knows, maybe there's some more. I don't know. I really don't know what to say. It's all very strange. But it's just interesting to me that this sighting occurred in Catalina Island. I'm not sure how many miles away that is. Let's assume it's, I don't know, 1,800 miles or whatever to Vegas between here and there. And on the same day, July 8th, 1947, same day of the UFO crash. I don't know. I just find that very interesting. Um, and Catalina Island also has a lot of USO reports, which is underwater submersible objects. I think it stands for. It's like UAP. It's like, yeah, I get it. It's kind of stupid. Just call it UFO. Being, it's a UFO that can come out of water and go into the water. Usually oceans, sometimes lakes. It's reported as well, but it's usually oceans. And It's interesting because I've always loved mythology and legends, like I got into at the beginning of the broadcast today, or stream, or whatever you call this. That's what always fascinated me about Celtic legends, is all of their UFO type descriptive stories of weird lights and cities beneath the sea and giants that live in the ocean and all this kind of strange stuff. And then to make it weirder, I forget. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was the WoW signal. Maybe it was the WoW signal. There was some I'm pretty sure it was the WoW signal. I don't want to get this wrong because it's a profound, very interesting story. Oh wait, no, it's sorry. I don't think it's the WoW signal. It's either the WoW signal or the Rendlesham Forest audio or whatever. Not from the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident, but there was something recorded during that incident. It's one or the other. I don't know why I can't remember which one. But anyways, the Rendlesham Forest incident, I'm pretty sure it's that one. There was this recording that they got, or these weird numbers or whatever that came into, I don't know if it was SETI. It was some kind of that kind of a system, right? Where it's looking for, frequencies from aliens or other civilizations. And where was I going with that? Oh yeah, and then the coordinates that was found in that, really, really creepy. But the coordinates that was found in that transmission or whatever ended up being the same coordinates that the lost mysterious island off the coast of Ireland called High Brazil, which is what's called a phantom island, meaning an island that kind of is mythological or is paranormal and kind of comes and goes. There's a lot of different legends, even in Ireland, of whether or not it sunk beneath the sea, or if it went to another dimension. And it's almost like a ghost ship kind of a thing, where it's like it might be in this universe, it might be like Project Philadelphia from another timeline. Like, we don't really know what's going on there. And there's this whole fascinating, cool story about the magician who lives on that island. I'm writing a whole story about it. It's a really, really cool narrative. But that this is the legend of Ireland about it, and the same area on the map, like the same freaking coordinates that it's supposed, like that's supposed to be the island, this phantom island that's provably doesn't exist anymore, right? That's where these coordinates led to. And I really hope I'm getting the origin story of it right, but it's something like that. It's either the Rendlesham Forest, it was either some kind of SETI satellite data, or possibly it was like somebody who claimed to like channel stuff, but I'm pretty sure this was like actual, like either way, it was weird. But it was I'm pretty sure it was the satellite data that came in. But point being, the profoundness of it is whatever this data come from, even if it was somebody channeling it. I mean, it's the same kind of weirdness as like getting satellite data that's supposedly alien, right? Like, point being, you're getting information from somewhere else, supposedly, right? And then it's just weird that it corresponded with that location. So anyways, there's something there to this idea. There's the Bermuda Triangle, UFOs, and reports there, and people disappearing, airplanes disappearing, boats disappearing, and all this stuff. So point being, there is something, I think, weird or spooky or mysterious about water in the ocean, or in certain locations like these kinds of locations that I'm talking about, where there's something going on here. There's something strange in your neighborhood. Who are you going to call? Ghostbusters? You know what I mean? There's just something weird here. So yeah, to me, this stuff is, I don't know. I don't even know what category to put it in. It's interesting, and it's spooky, but it's fascinating. Anyway, I'm almost up on an hour, so let me just finish this article with you guys real quick, and we'll call it a day for my first stream, because I don't think I kept anybody interested, unfortunately, but it was a good practice round. So the same day that the U.S. Army reports a crash for a flying saucer at Roswell, basically 6 UFOs, 2 groups of 3 flying discs soared over Avalon, Catalina Island, Wrigley Island, all the same place. I know it's confusing. Soared over Avalon, only to disappear over the vast Pacific, same day that the UFO crash occurred in Roswell. And that would have been the same day that the UFO crash in Aztec, New Mexico occurred as well, which a lot of UFO, according to UFO research and lore, that was the more profound UFO crash, because that had the living alien body or more alien bodies, or a more intact alien or more intact UFO was discovered there or whatever. It was just supposed to be like, let the media have Roswell. Aztec is the real story we got to cover up, kind of a thing. So, getting back into the article and finishing it up here, the following edition of this very newspaper, Catalina Islander, featured their accounts on the front page. That article in the Catalina Islander recounts the eyewitness reports of 3 experienced Air Force veterans, all of whom had been in the war. So one of these men, who reportedly had flown more than 35 bombing missions over Germany with the 8th Air Force, estimated that the airborne vehicles were traveling at 850 miles per hour. Like, that's the kind of level of some of the stuff I've seen where I'm like, this just moves too quickly to be anything in our wheelhouse, unless this is just super advanced government equipment, or, I'm not a big aliens guy. I'm really not. I know you'd think, you're like, well, but you're talking about UFOs. Like, yeah, but I'm not really that big of an aliens guy. I think the phenomenon's real. I just don't know. You know what I mean? I'm still looking for that smoking gun answer. So one of these men had flown 35 bombing missions. He reports, okay, these UFOs were flying at 850 miles per hour. And the Foo Fighters and the whole World War II boom is something that'll be for another podcast as well. But it's really interesting how many people over there saw, how many veterans have UFO stories, especially pilots. It's just fascinating. So according to Alvio Russo, the discs came in from the direction of Los Angeles and disappeared over the eastern rim of Avalon Canyon. Was this sighting a little hoax pulled on us by these veterans? Possibly. But remember, this was in the days before Twitter and Facebook. I hate that kind of stuff. Like, don't be detrimental or self-depreciating about this kind of shit. Like, come on. So for these fellows to have even heard about the Roswell crash, even before the Roswell newspaper came out with the headlines, is stretching a bit. Yeah, but unless it's true, jackass, geez. On top of that, there was a rash of similar sightings. Okay, so that's journalism for you, but in the modern age. Nobody knows how to do objective journalism or just report the history of things anymore. It's profoundly sad. So anyways, Catalina Island, Wrigley Island, Avalon Island, lots of spooky stuff. And Santa Monica, even on the mainland, and Los Angeles, and even areas you would never think, like the Beverly Hills area, is believe it or not, where I saw my most profound UFO sighting was while I was renting a guest house in Beverly Hills, and which I wouldn't recommend to anybody, by the way. I know it sounds luxurious or whatever, but it's no. But that was a very interesting experience as well. So, long story short, there's these certain epicenters of strangeness, and who knows? Maybe it's because of cults and sorcerers and the Illuminati doing spells and magic with Aleister Crowley and that motherfucker that they based Iron Man off of. But who knows? Who knows what's at the bottom of all this stuff? It's very interesting. What's the origin of it? Are they aliens? Are they demons? Or is it a secret government project? You know what I mean? We'll find out one of these days, or never. That'd be fun too. No, I would like to get to the bottom of these things and get some answers. But in the meantime, you got to have fun, enjoy life, and not take yourself too seriously. So I'm going to work on doing that. Thank you very much for tuning in. For all 0 people that are with me at the end of this live stream. It was a good first live stream. It was a good first attempt. But kind of like the first time I had sex, I feel like future attempts will be better as I continue to learn and grow. And I thank you. And I appreciate you. Like, subscribe, comment, theorize, criticize, circumcise, do all that good stuff. But make sure to follow me, especially on the gram. And yeah, follow Strange TV. That's what you're watching right now. Strange TV on YouTube. Our handle's Elsewhere TV. Don't let that fool you, but we're Strange TV. Thank you very much, and I'll catch you guys next time.